Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Waking Up with Wandy, your host. Yes, yours truly, Wandy, on the Stock Showdown podcast. We have a very special guest here with us this morning on the Stock Showdown podcast. We have Ryan Horn. So I do want to appreciate and extend the appreciation to Ryan for cutting out a sliver of his time here this morning, hailing from the Twin Cities of Minnesota. Ryan is the founder of the Extraordinary Man Movement. He's the creator of the Brotherhood of Extraordinary Men Mastermind. And not only that, the host of the top-rated Extraordinary Man podcast. We're looking forward to hearing Ryan's mission on how he came to be to where he is today. But ultimately, Ryan's mission is to help men maximize their potential and become the extraordinary man God created them to be so they can lead their businesses, families, and themselves to success and fulfillment. So without further ado, everybody, let's welcome Ryan Horn to the Stock Showdown podcast. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. I like to bring the energy, and I'm sure you bring the energy on your podcast and in your endeavors there, Ryan. So let's get right into it, Ryan. How did you, let's get your story here, because I see a little bit of a background, that you went from, being broke and working 12-hour nights to where you are today. So obviously some trials and tribulation a long time ago, and now you've really turned the path and now have these extraordinary things that you're doing. So let's hear how you came to be with this new movement, Ryan.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take you back a ways to start off with. So nobody in my family owns a business, is into entrepreneurship, but I kind of always had that mindset growing up. And so kind of my first entrepreneurial venture was when I was probably 10, 11 years old. So the previous summer, our Sunday school had sold these calendars. I'm from a tiny little town in northern Minnesota, like 300 people. So we knew everybody. So we went and sold these calendars to like the grocery store and the bank and like the neighbors. And the next summer, my mom kept getting these fundraising magazines. And so I'm looking through it and I'm 10 or 11 years old and I'm like, I can go sell these calendars and make like $200 profit if I go sell 30 calendars or something. So I convinced my mom to order the calendars, and I went by myself, like door to door to the neighbors and to the bank and the grocery store selling them again. And it was really funny because everybody asked me if I was doing it for the Sunday school again. And I'm like, nope, I'm just doing it for me. And they kind of looked at me funny. But
wow.
That was my first venture into anything entrepreneurial, and tried a bunch of stuff in high school. Nothing really worked, and ended up going to college, and with the goal of becoming a strength and conditioning coach out of college. And as I was kind of going through that process, my entrepreneurial spirit got reignited. I read a book called The Education of Millionaires that kind of sparked that, as well as just finding out that, man, I don't really want to, move across the country to wherever I can find a job. Probably need a master's degree to get a strength and conditioning job, et cetera, et cetera. My schedule is not going to be what I want. Probably going to be working early mornings, weekends, whatever. So I'm like, why don't I just start my own business? I can train athletes or train regular people. And so that's what I did. Graduated, moved down to the Twin Cities, and started my business. And I very quickly realized I did not know very much about marketing and selling. And they didn't teach me that part in college. And so about 3 months in, I've made a total of $200. And obviously that's not going to cut it. And it was tough. It was rough. And so I was drowning in student loan debt, obviously needed to make some money. And so went to an employment agency. And as you mentioned too, I'm sleeping on my aunt's couch at this point, and it was a 60+ condo community, and I wasn't even supposed to be there. So I'm sneaking in and out every day. I didn't blend in very well as a 22-year-old with 60+-year-old people. But yeah, so I go to this employment agency. They place me at this metal factory. I'm working 12-hour night shifts, 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. for $9 an hour. And I'm sitting there in the break room one night, and look up at the clock. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I just had this epiphany, just kind of hit me, because I realized it was my 23rd birthday. And I'm like, man, like, how the heck did I get here? Like, I thought I did everything right. I got good grades, and everybody's telling me I can go be successful at whatever. And here I am. I tried this business. I failed. Now I'm in the metal factory. And now what? And so I don't know if you've ever felt like you were made for more, like you're letting everybody around you down, but that's exactly how I felt in that moment, and it didn't feel very good. And so I just kind of sat there feeling sorry for myself for probably 10, 15 minutes. But then I made a really powerful decision, and something that I have since looked back on and learned is that you can actually use the pain of those moments to fuel you forward. And so that's basically what I did. I made a really powerful decision. I said, you know what? I don't want to look back 5 years from now and I'm still in the metal factory break room looking up at the clock, when I'm 28 or 38 and being like, man, how did I get here? So made a powerful decision. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go restart my business. I'm going to learn how to sell, learn how to market, whatever I need to do to make it work, or basically die trying. So I finished out my shift and quit the metal factory, went and restarted my business, and knew obviously I needed to learn a bunch of new things, change some habits and stuff. So dove headfirst into personal development. One of the first things I bought was this 30-hour Tony Robbins audio program, and I just listened to that thing on repeat. Started changing my mindset, started getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I found some accountability partners, found some mentors that started teaching me how to sell and how to market specifically in the fitness industry, and slowly started making a little bit of traction. I think about 6 months later or so, maybe a little bit less than that, was able to move out of my aunt's place. And I was scraping by, but I was making it on my own. And then about a year into that, things were okay. I was paying my bills, but barely. I had my own apartment at that time, but I hired a coach. And that is kind of the next thing that really shifted everything for me. Didn't know that much about coaching, like life coaching, business coaching. And this guy totally flipped everything upside down. My business doubled within the next year, but really just every area of my life got better because I had that focused attention on it. And so from that point on, I kind of got interested in coaching. And so I took some small steps on the side, started coaching some people on the side. My fitness business was doing well at that time. And then over a period of, honestly, a couple of years, I just got more and more into coaching. Just felt like God was pushing me more in that direction. In 2018 is when I officially got the LLC for Extraordinary Man. And I've been doing that ever since. So I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, run a mastermind. As you said, I have the Extraordinary Man podcast, where I bring on other high-level men, mostly entrepreneurs, sometimes high-level athletes, speakers, authors, etc., and interview them. But yeah, love what I do. And I think one of the big things, we'll probably get into this more here in a second, but is that action brings clarity. So if you're just sitting and thinking about stuff and trying to figure it all out before you do anything, then you're probably still going to be sitting there a year from now and not doing anything. So you just got to get into action. Even if you don't know exactly what to do, just start doing something and it will start to become more clear.
Wow, that was a fantastic little background on yourself. And one thing that stood out to me the most, and I got a visualization of when you were in the break room, looking at the clock on the metal sheet factory at 2 a.m. and it's your 23rd birthday, right? So I'm getting this visualization of you doing that, and it's your birthday. And then it dawned on me. I'm like, I've seen this scene before. So I'm reminded of the movie Rudy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Rudy.
Yep.
So Rudy has this aspiration of playing for the Fighting Irish. So he works for his father at a, I guess, sheet metal factory, or does something in a factory. And he's sitting there with his buddy on his birthday. I'm not sure what birthday it was. I want to say it's in the 20s or something like that. And that was his realization at that moment on his birthday. Like, he gives him this Letterman's jacket to Notre Dame. He's like, that's it. I'm done here. I'm going to go play football for the Irish. So like, it just, I envisioned you sitting there. I'm like, that's Rudy Rudiger right there. So
that's amazing. Yeah. I've never made that connection, but you're right. Yeah.
I hope you can use that, because I was just seeing Rudy in the same scene as you, Ryan. So thank you for sharing. And like a lot has changed since your fundraising days. my God, that kids can't go out by themselves anymore and sell anything. And you're sitting there going door to door. I love it. So times have changed. I mean, they're still doing fundraising. Trust me, in the schools that it's pretty awful. But obviously, it sets you on the path of entrepreneurship and where you are today. I think you emphasized your kind of, not to say aha moment, but the moment that turned it all around. And that was hiring a business coach. What was the process like of finding a business coach? Because, like I've read, all sorts of, posts about this kind of stuff. Like, look, the great ones, Michael Jordan was great because he had Phil Jackson as a coach. Kobe Bryant was great because he had Phil Jackson as a coach. The Boston Celtics of the 1960s and 70s were great because they had Red Auerbach as a coach. John Wooden in UCLA, those teams were so good because they had a good coach. So I think it's important to emphasize as a business owner too that you can't do it all yourself. You could be the greatest thing out there, but if you don't have a solid coach behind you, you could run down the wrong path. So what was your process like of getting out there and getting a coach?
Yeah, great question. I mean, first of all, just a couple of thoughts on coaching is that, you're never going to maximize your potential without a coach. Some people go further than others on their own, obviously, but you're not going to maximize it. And I like to look at coaching as just taking a shortcut. Can you do it on your own? Yes, but do you want it to take 10 years or 6 months? But yeah, so the process of finding a coach for me was actually, I went about it a little bit differently than I think most people find coaches. So I mentioned that Tony Robbins 30-hour audio program. So when I bought that, I think it came with a voucher for like a free coaching session or something. And they probably called me like 20 times and I just ignored it. The audio program was what I did. But so a year, maybe a year and a half later, whatever it was, I was in this place where, like I said, I kind of felt like I had plateaued and things were okay. Wasn't living with my aunt anymore, but they were far from where I wanted to be. And I knew I was not maximizing my potential on my own. So I did this free coaching call. And man, I had an amazing breakthrough just on the free coaching call of just the biggest thing I think was just clarity about here's where I'm at, here's where I want to go, and here's what I need to do to get there. And it's going to be really difficult to try to do that on my own. So I didn't have the money at the time, but boom, signed up for 6 months of coaching through Tony Robbins. And so it was not even a specific business coach. But one thing that I've found about coaching, and especially business coaching, I would say, is that a lot of people are looking for the strategies, and obviously the strategy is important, but especially in today's age, most people are not struggling finding the strategy, they're struggling actually implementing it. And so that's the biggest thing that I got from coaching initially, and I think that's probably the biggest thing I provide for people that I coach is let me help you start to maximize your potential. Because you probably already know what you should be doing, you're just not doing it, or not doing it consistently or at the level you could or should be. So that's a little bit of how I found out about coaching and some of the things that I think are biggest takeaways.
Well, I guess when you're talking business coaching, I mean, getting the 6-month business coaching through Tony Robbins. I mean, when you think of, inspirational figures, I mean, Tony Robbins, it has to be at the top of that list. So even though it sounds like you didn't have one specifically, I think just being obviously involved with the Tony Robbins empire definitely put you on the right path.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So, I mean, I think you emphasized something in a previous statement that, you have this vision. It's just you don't actually get out and execute it. So you could be sitting there for 6 months and with the right coach, that thing can get executed in 6 months because that coach is going to push you along the way and provide that action. Now, how different is a coach from a mentor? Because I want to be clear with my audience here that having the coach is one thing, but how can you distinguish between an effective coach and an effective mentor?
That's a good question. And I think it is kind of confusing because some people will use them interchangeably. And I mean, people have different definitions of them, right? For me personally, when I think of a mentor, I think of somebody that's older than me, that's, has experience and has, done something that I want to do. And this could be for any area of your life. Maybe it's that, I'm going to be a new dad, so I want to go find somebody that has some kids and has some experience, right? So I can learn from them. So typically, my understanding at least is that mentors are not something that you go and pay for. It's somebody that you find. It's usually somebody that you meet with in person, and you just want to learn from some of their experience in some particular area. And again, it could be about fatherhood, could be about marriage, could be about business, whatever. A coaching relationship is more of a professional relationship. It's where you're investing money into this relationship. And a coach is, I think when you invest in a coach, it gives them permission to speak into your life in a different way. Because again, most mentors, I would say you have some type of relationship, maybe you're friends, or I don't know, they go to your church or whatever, right? And so a lot of times mentors are a little bit like, they don't want to rock the boat too much necessarily, is what I would say. And this is why having your friends try to coach you or try to keep you accountable, it's better than nothing, but it's not the same as having a coach. Because for me as a coach, I think one of the biggest things I can provide for people is that I am not afraid to call them out on things. I'm not afraid to boldly ask questions that probably nobody else in their life will ask them. So that's kind of the, I guess, basics of how I would differentiate mentorship from coaching.
All right, so it really falls down to keeping people accountable, where these mentors again might basically tread on thin ice or walk on eggshells because again you have a relationship with them, they're friendly to you. But a coach, again, I just keep then I'm thinking like Coach Krzyzewski, and like again they don't care, like they care about the people. Don't get me wrong, but they want to push their players or their individuals to be better. So now, when you are first getting started and you get somebody interested in hiring you to be a coach, what kind of expectations do you lay out from the start? How does that conversation start? The first meeting with this individual. So this individual is interested, and boom, here you go. How does that process start with you?
Yeah, so kind of two different things. Yeah, kind of two different things that I'll share. So first of all, when I'm meeting with somebody for the first time, I'm giving them an actual coaching experience. And then when somebody signs up, that's kind of more like when I will lay out the expectations of what coaching is going to look like moving forward. One of the biggest things that I would say, big trap that people fall into, I have many times before, whether it's you're hiring a coach or you're buying a program or going to an event, is that you think that thing is suddenly going to be like the magic pill, like that's going to save you somehow. You're like, oh, my business is struggling now. I hired Ryan. Now everything's going to be okay. And you still have to put in the work. So one of the biggest things that I make clear to people is that, look, I'm going to show up and I'm going to, do everything I can, but I'm going to show up with my 50%, 100% of my 50%, but you have to show up with 100% of your 50%, because I can't do it for you. I can coach you, I can keep you accountable, I can ask you the hard questions, but at the end of the day, like, I can't make you do it, right? So you have to be invested in yourself too, and you have to show up powerfully. You can't just be like, oh, I hired Ryan as a coach, now he's going to fix everything, and if he doesn't, then it's all on him. And so that's one of the things that my first coach really showed me, that, man, that's not how it works. Like, you still got to show up. This is not some magic pill. And so as a coach, basically, I really communicate that with people from the start, that, hey, I'm here to serve you, not be your savior. And so that's kind of the conversation when somebody signs up. As far as like somebody's interested, they're like, hey, Ryan, what do you do? I will get them on the phone and give them a 60-minute coaching experience, because I can tell you about coaching and how great it is. But if you actually experience it, then you can decide for yourself. Was this powerful? Wow, this, helped me get so much clarity, or this or that or whatever. And kind of the two, my two biggest outcomes in terms of jumping on with somebody brand new is to help them get really clear on where they're at right now and where they want to go. And then number two, to help them get really committed to that. And so there's a series of questions that I ask to help them get leverage on themselves. And it's usually the most powerful part of an initial coaching call with me, is people have never really thought about these questions, or they've never had anybody ask them these questions in this level of depth. So that's a little bit more.
Awesome. Very inspiring. So now your business breakthrough framework that you've created, you have 5 steps, or what is your 5-step business breakthrough framework? Can you elaborate a little bit upon that?
Yeah, so I'll just give you kind of a brief overview, and if you want to go deeper on any of the parts, we definitely can, because I could make that an hour-long conversation. So the 5 steps: number 1 is clarity, number 2 is commitment, number 3 is coaching, number 4 is courageous action, and number 5 is course correction. So kind of what I just laid out, my 2 goals when I jump on an initial call with somebody are to go through steps 1 and 2. I want to help you get really clear, and I want to help you get more committed. And then beyond that, obviously if, you invest in me as a coach, I will help with the coaching part. But I think one of the biggest problems that I see with people, whether they have a coach or not, is that they want to kind of skip over and just try to go to the courageous action. So if you have a big dream, you have a big vision, you have big goals, I can guarantee you it's going to require you to take courageous action, probably consistently, not just once or twice. And so if you're not clear and committed, you don't have a high level of coaching, and there's different forms of coaching, not just one-on-one, right? Then what you're going to find yourself not taking the courageous action. You're going to be procrastinating. You're going to know what you should do, but you're going to be keeping on putting it off, or you're going to do it once in a while or when it's convenient. So that's one of the big things that I found. And then the other thing that I'll mention on course correction is that people get really frustrated and quit usually because they do the first 4 steps. They're like, I was clear, I was committed, I have coaching, I took courageous action, but it didn't turn out the way I wanted to, didn't work out the way I wanted. And then they end up quitting because they get frustrated, or they say, oh, it must be something wrong with me, right? But you got to remember that the first time you try anything new, it's never going to work out the way you want. I can promise you, right? So you got to realize and just have the attitude of, I'm going to have to make some course corrections, probably more than once, probably more than a couple times. It's probably going to take me way more tries than I think and way more work than I think to actually get to where I want to go.
So now, did you notice, you said you started this this new journey of yours in 2018, right, with coaching?
Yes. Yeah.
Correct.
So I actually started coaching people in 2015, but full time 2018.
So did you notice an explosion of people looking for coaching due to the pandemic in 2020? Have you noticed growth, substantial growth over the last couple of years?
I would actually say there hasn't necessarily been like a big, from my perspective, because I'm work with business owners specifically, not just anybody. I haven't really noticed it. So one thing that I would say is people that are entrepreneurs and business owners, I think have a little bit different mindset typically from just general population. They're used to investing in themselves, whether it be going to conferences or buying courses or coaching. So I wouldn't say that I saw necessarily any type of major increase in that. It would be interesting, like just across the board general population, if there was an increase in that. But yeah, for me, not really.
Okay. Just curious. I've had other coaches on and they've, have emphasized because, whether, again, maybe a different niche of business coaching, what have you, had noticed a amount of people, entrepreneurs now, people that were fed up with their whatever 9-to-5 jobs and they wanted to kind of do something for themselves. So I was just curious on your take on that one. So now that we're getting a little close on time, Ryan, and my primary audience is my high school students, what kind of advice could you give to high school students right now growing up in this day and age? Maybe things that you wish you would have learned or knew back when you were 16, 17, 18 years old.
Yeah. So, I mean, the really short, simple answer that I would say is that failure is not final. Like, because especially when I was in high school, there were things that I made such a big deal out of that looking back now is really not that big of a deal, right? But that failure is not final. So when you fail at something, and I don't even like to use that word, but when you try something that doesn't work out the way you want it to, that's actually a necessary step for you to actually get to where you want to go. You know, like I was talking about before, you're going to have to make course corrections. Plain and simple. You know, if you have a big vision, you have big goals for your life, you're going to have to take action. It's most of the time not going to work out the way you want it to, especially in the beginning, and you're going to have to course correct. So just having perseverance and determination, and get really focused on what it is that you want, take action on it, and realize that, you know, you may fail, quote unquote, at it in the beginning, but if you keep going, you're going to learn, you're going to gain experience from those failures, and then you can course correct and eventually get to where you want to go.
Fantastic. Failure is not final, ladies and gentlemen. And again, we don't like to use the word failure as trying something and it doesn't work. That's okay. And I think a lot of people, you know, my own children, you know, at least my 11-year-old, she's, you know, on the precipice of being a teenager or a tween, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, is afraid to try new things because of that fear of failure. But it's not final. So I appreciate the words of wisdom and encouragement there, Ryan. Great insight over the last 25 minutes. I really appreciate your time here this morning. If you want to learn more, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ryan, they could check out your website, which is coachryanhorn.com.
Yep,
is that accurate?
That is correct.
All right. So for more, you know, opportunities to look into and get to know Ryan a little bit more, check out his website. That's coachryanhorn, HORN.com. So this is Ryan Horn and yours truly, Wandy, on the Stock Showdown podcast, signing off. God bless.